Yo, you bring up something interesting that I want to ask both of you guys. Do you guys think like these fights in the anime are just like too short?
Yes, so I do think that's the case, and I do feel like that. For me, a lot of people have been hyping up these last two episodes. One, a
Bar.
character dies. I would say, yeah, I
I
would say
think
like a
three
major.
characters died in the last episode.
Well, I was gonna say like a major character that we expected to see move forwards in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
He's dead. I mean, hell, I even have a Kagura explained video talking about how he's the future Mizukage, and
Yep.
trust me, I've been getting the comments rubbing that in my face.
Rest in peace,
Love you
Kagura.
guys. He
Yeah.
said, "Oh, well, actually, it's okay, Mister Hindsight no Jutsu, Jesus Christ." And then the other one is like it's resting its laurels. That's an interesting word. Big boomer words today. On the fact
I
that
don't even know what that
it has
means.
like decent art and decent animation, right? So
Hmm.
it's like okay, when we get into like that's fine, but to me that should be like the bare minimum, like a good plot, a good story for a character arc, and good art and animation shouldn't be like some spectacular thing that we all praise. It should just be like the standard and pretty mundane because we get it so consistently. But that's not the case, and I'm not gonna rant about it. But for me, I do feel like the fight should be a little bit longer. I feel like that Deepa versus Team Seven final battle was long, bro, and I enjoyed every moment of it. It had ebbs and flows. It had character, it had story in it of itself within the story, and I really enjoyed that. And yeah, I feel you. Like I watched the clips, and he rages and then runs up, and I think we just hear some sound effects with the kunai. I think FBK was saying that,
Mm-hmm.
and then he hits him with the Rasengan, and then that's pretty much curtains for that dude. It's stuff like that. It's like the thing the thing that people will go crazy for is really dope moments, but those moments need to actually last and be really significant. Had that moment been the same length, but maybe something a little bit more substantial, I think it wouldn't matter. But because we got so little in such a little period of time, I think that's really where the problem comes from. But ultimately, it's just a matter of opinion.
Not 100%. Now, my thing is, I had that stance for a long time. Like, even back when Naruto and Sasuke fought against Momoshiki Otsutsuki, I thought that fight, when they were actually fighting against Final Form Momoshiki, I thought that fight should have been a lot longer, potentially about 2 episodes or even 2.5 episodes. But I think the reason why the Boruto episode 175 fight, the Deepa fight, was a little bit longer and drawn out was because there were multiple things happening at the same time. You had the Boruto fight, then it cut to the Orochimaru fight. Well, start off with the Konohamaru fight, Konohamaru versus Victor,
Mm.
and then of course Orochimaru jumped in. Orochimaru packed up Victor quickly. Victor tried to jump onto the God tree because he quickly understood that he couldn't beat Orochimaru. But I think that right there was what like one of the best things about Naruto Shippuden, especially during the war arc. There are multiple battles at the same time. There are multiple things going down, and of course that right there in itself kind of lengthened it, kind of made it a little bit longer. But also, it could possibly be the actual things in the fight. For example, the Boruto fights right now, there aren't necessarily a lot of, let's say, tactical things that go down. Whereas Naruto Shippuden, let's say even like a Shikamaru fight when Shikamaru was fighting against Hidan and everybody like that. When Kakashi plus Ino Shigecho was fighting against like Hidan and Kakazu, that fight was extremely long because there was a lot of planning and everything like that going into it. I think if they add a little bit more of that aspect, which I think they are doing with Shikamaru, it could potentially be a lot longer. But in regards to the recent episodes, I think the reason why they were just so short is because the animators just didn't necessarily do it. Like they didn't have the stuff. Like I don't know. I don't know how
Come
else to
on,
say
Bar.
it. I
Stop
mean,
it. Stop it, Bar. We are in the middle
they,
of a war. Why are fights
they,
so short in the middle of a war? Come on,
Does
stop it.
it does it feel like we're in the middle of a war? Because I don't
At
get that
all.
feeling at all,
At
like
all.
at
no,
all.
no, no. It does feel like we're in the middle of the war. The reason why it doesn't feel like in the middle of the war for you guys is because you guys you guys like swayed by the actual manga. I personally believe because there's multiple fight. Like for example, the Siren fight. I was absolutely amazed by the Siren fight. A lot of people don't necessarily like it.
It
The
was
reason why
dope. It
people
was
don't like,
nice. It was nice.
but no, no, it was nice, quote unquote. It wasn't great. I think it should have been classified as not necessarily great, but I think it should have been classified as really, really good. The reason why it wasn't is because people don't necessarily respect the actual villains. Like we're talking about Funamushi. Like how didn't Funamushi just go pop? It's because he's durable. I think if anybody would actually let's say like Obito that took that hit, we'd just be like, yo, Obito's like crazy durable. But now we're like, yo, is the Rasengan nerfed? It's like people don't really respect the villains. I think that's one of the biggest reasons. But of course, we're in a war. I think one of the biggest kind of examples of that is people are legitimately dying. One of the biggest things that I really, really hated about like quote unquote wars or quote unquote times of like chaos and things such as that, especially with the in Naruto Part One, no one died. No, none of the actual good guys died. Kagura dying, in my personal opinion, was a very, very big plot point, not just for this arc, but for every single arc going further, because we thought that this guy was supposed to be Kage.
But bro,
Yeah, it's
go ahead, Mel. My bad.
no. I want to hear what you have to say.
I was just gonna say, like you said, that we don't respect the villains, but whose fault is it that we don't respect the villains? Like, it's the show's fault. Like they're not giving us no
I don't
depth to these villains.
I don't necessarily think it's totally the show's fault. I think it's just because we're desensitized. I think even when Shin Uchiha came, like big pause, even when Shin Uchiha was introduced into the series, like no one cared that this guy had like no one cared that he was littered with Mangekyo Sharingan. Where everybody's just like, hey, no one cares. And this guy was actually in a manga, not the Boruto manga. He was in a Gaiden, but no one really cared. People were like, yo, Naruto and Sasuke showing up. They should be able to absolutely destroy this guy. This guy had telekinesis. He's like, yo, how did he stab Sasuke? They're completely nerfed. Now, don't get me wrong. They're still a little bit nerfed, but people were still like downplaying Shinichiro and just saying, "Oh, it's just because Naruto and Sasuke are nerfed." No one really cares. You see what I'm saying? Again, I think the desensitized thing is because the Ishiki Otsuki phenomenon, the Momoshiki Otsuki phenomenon. If they're not Godspeed, if they're not light speed, multiple times light speed, if they're not necessarily bringing extremely huge explosions, no one's really gonna care.
That's not true though, bro. You just said the Deepa fight. We all can agree that the Deepa fight was elite. No, right or wrong?
But he's elite.
Yeah, but it wasn't no big blast, people moving light speed. The Owl versus Boruto fight, that was elite to me. There was like, bro, I
think he.
Go ahead.
The Owl thing, he already had an established lore to him. The Deepa thing, he had to build his reputation. I think we talked about this. Deepa literally had to kill everybody that he's seen. Like, there's a point in the story where every single person that he laid eyes on, they were dead. Period, point blank. He's gonna say, I think.
And the writers made us like Deepa, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, but if you're in the midst of a war, and I kind of understand this by their point of view, if you're in the midst of a war, and you're trying to develop Syrian, you're trying to develop the Funato clan, you're trying to develop Asari, you're trying to develop Tenma, you're trying to, it's just too much people to develop in a matter of a couple episodes. I still do believe they should add a little bit more, but you can't necessarily have the deeper level of development in a war like this where there's multiple villains at the same time.
No, I think I agree with Free Game because, I mean, who put all those characters in there? And that was their decision. That was their choice. They've made, like, they create this world, this story, this plot. So if they can't handle all those characters, then maybe they shouldn't have done that. And
I'll completely, no, I agree with that. I'm very heavily criticized. Well, I'm heavily critical of the Boruto writers for not actually going and diving into the backstory of a lot of these characters. But my thing is that you can't necessarily have every single character have the deeper level of backstory, because if that's the case, there should be no war. There should only be one villain. And to have a war, you need to develop multiple backstories. So either they should have actually had the villains be characters that we've seen before. Let's say some Shinichiro clones go rogue or something like that. They join like some pirates or something like that. I think that right there could have potentially been a good or something like that. Or even some other villains that we've seen in the past. They got stronger and then they joined the actual Funato clan or the Funamushi clan. But if you're going to introduce brand new villains, I think there should be at least some character development. Not necessarily the deeper one, not necessarily the deeper level, but the problem with the deeper level is that you're not necessarily going to get fans to respect these villains unless they have that deeper level of character development.
I tend to agree for the most part, but ultimately it still lies in their shoulders. I don't want to get too down on them for it.
Oh no, absolutely. I'll agree with that.
Yeah, I have a certain curve that I grade Boruto on moving forwards. So, you know, operating under that understanding, I think they're doing a decent job. But for me, it's like, okay, you're supposed to establish these characters, make us enjoy them. They're supposed to right within your means. That is to say that if you can't do this with this many characters, then maybe you should pull back a little bit. And there's episodes. I mean, the pacing's all over the place for me. Where there's episodes where we're just drifting on the sea and we're saving random dudes that we never really is integral to the actual story in any shape, form, or fashion that I can recall. So I don't know. It's fascinating to me, but I do think they did some things right too, right? So I've been talking about this as it correlates to the manga. I don't think Code, Ada, and Damon are enough. I do believe that they need to incorporate some kind of henchmen, some kind of grunts, captains, lieutenants, something of the sort. And the reason why you do that is because you allow your side characters to get some shine, get their moment, and it makes them relevant. So for me, I think they've done a decent job for having an organization that's the antagonizing force moving the plot forwards, and having enough people within that organization, and having like tier systems to where it gives our side characters something to do. I think they executed that well, but I don't think they took advantage of it to where I don't know. I haven't seen the last 2 episodes, to be fair. Did Metal League get an impactful moment in this arc yet?
Nope.
I'm asking the question
Well,
genuinely.
he is kind of simping over old girl. I forgot her name.
Yo, the ugliest girl out of the
Hibichiko.
whole bunch too, bro. Like the weirdest looking one. Like, come on, my dude. What are we doing?
So-
Hey, bro, Metal Lee might be eccentric. You never know.
Hey,